Hello,
Hello,
everyone.
everybody. Yeah, welcome back after a long hiatus.
Yes, well, we're trying to do better, but life be lifing.
It's not easy being a working adult, and that's actually a really good segue to what we're going to talk about today. So, Michelle, why
We
don't
need to
you?
introduce ourselves again. I'm
Okay,
Michelle.
and I'm Alfredo. Speaking of what we just mentioned,
Let's start with the story of the week.
yeah, Michelle, tell us the story of the week.
So, the story of the week is around paying taxes. And that's kind of where the topic came from because I was complaining about having to do taxes. The older I get, it feels to me that my doing taxes gets more complicated. And I was saying that I understand why people get accountants because it's so much easier to just outsource the work. But it's one of those things that when you're younger, of course, you don't need to do taxes. It's just something that is unavoidable as an adult, as a working adult, but it doesn't mean that it's the funnest activity to do,
And that gets us to the topic of the week, which is things you didn't know as a kid that you learn as an adult.
which there are many of.
Exactly, like paying taxes. What
Mhm.
other things?
Well, we can just jump in. I know you and I have talked about it, and so we both have a few things that we want to sort of share. And I'm curious for the audience as well if this resonates with other people. There's probably a lot more things here that we're not going to say, but I think this is something that everybody can relate to the older you get.
When you're in university, you think that you're an adult, but you're really not. I
Hmm.
don't think until you actually work, pay taxes, and support yourself financially, you really understand what it means to be an adult.
Yeah, totally agree.
Because it's sort of like when you're a kid, your parents take care of you and there's structure in your life and you have limited freedom and you have less autonomy, but at
Mhm.
the same time everything's kind of structured for you. Like all you really need to do is go to school and get good grades, and that's your life. Like your parents are providing you food and a place to live,
Mhm.
and that kind of goes even up till college in some ways.
For sure. And we understand too that people in high school or college, you may get a part-time job and all of that, but that still is not the same as essentially taking on the entire load of living your life. So Alfredo, do you have what's one thing that you didn't know as a kid that you learned as an adult?
I do feel like kids are always taught to be idealistic about their future and life. And what do they say? The sky is the limit.
The sky's the
You
limit.
can be anything. You can
You can be an
accomplish whatever
astronaut.
you put your mind to. And I think as you get older, you kind of adjust your expectations about what you'll actually do with your life.
Hmm.
Maybe you could say you're more pessimistic or you're more realistic or what you want to say. But as you get older, I think things change about what you want to do for a job.
Hmm.
Maybe you're not going to be the president or be, a Nobel
Are you
Prize
saying I
winning
can't be the
science.
president of America?
You weren't born here, right?
I was not.
So yeah, you can't be the president.
That's rude.
You could be like a senator or something.
No, I need to be the president.
Okay,
That's
well,
Well, I can't
maybe
apparently. So here,
maybe
that's a great example of something that I have realized as an adult. I can't be the president of this
okay.
country. So life
Well,
humbles you, that's for sure.
we can like stage a coup and change the constitution.
Well, actually, in my country, that happened where the president tried to change the constitution so that he could stay and become a dictator, and then the military had a coup. So
Yeah,
where
coups
I'm
are
from, that's
cool.
like another Tuesday.
Coups are pretty cool. Like,
Well, in that has you remember January 6th? So America is not it's not like America's untouched from crazy people trying to take over. But that's a topic for another time.
but yeah, no, do you agree though that when you're a kid, you have a lot of structure in your day-to-day life? And even in going up until
Yes.
university, you have that structure.
Yes.
But contrast that with being an adult where,
Yeah, actually that brings me into something that I want to share, which is making decisions as an adult. As you mentioned, as a kid, you have your parents or whoever your guardian is, who provide the structure for you, even in high school. college, obviously you have a little less structure, but there's still you're required to go to class, you have to do all of these things. But as an adult, you make every decision, or you should be making every decision about everything in your life. What do you eat every day? Where are you going to go? What are you going to buy? What are you spending your money on? And as a kid, or at least when I was a kid, I was excited to become an adult because I was like, well, I want to be able to do whatever I want. But as an adult, it's like there's so many decisions that need to be made just every day that for me, I kind of was overwhelmed at the fact that like if I don't make the decision, like life is going to make it for me. So that was something I learned.
But wouldn't you say, even as an adult, it's true that you can decide how you spend your money, what you do with your time,
Mm,
how you eat, what you feed yourself? I think that we are forced into a structure by having to work a job from
hmm.
Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, or whatever schedule you have. That does give you structure. And I think that's different as a kid. Because I guess, like, as a kid, you are in school, but it's not
Hmm.
totally the same.
You're right. And obviously at work, unless you're the big boss, you are not making every decision. And so I agree. There are parts of our lives where we can't literally do anything that we want to do. But I do think that I personally felt like there were so many decisions that I didn't really think about as a kid or didn't need to think as a kid, that as an adult, you do need to do that or you need to make that decision. So that was something different.
But it's funny that you say that about work, where you can't control everything and you're usually working under somebody, because I feel
Mhm.
like that was something they tell you as a kid. You have to always, in life, you always have to do things you don't want to do. And that's actually is
That
very
is
true.
true.
But I guess that's a life lesson they try to teach you as a kid, and then as an adult, you realize that it is true.
You're right about that. What's something else you realize as an adult?
I would just say that we are talking about how all of that decision making falls on you as an adult, how you spend your money, what type of apartment you want to rent, if you want to save money, if you
Mm,
want to eat out, if you want to try to cook your own food and save money, all those things. It's responsibility, but I think that it has a positive side too, because you are in control of your own life.
yes, you are. And that's one of the things that I think is, of course, good about being an adult as well, that you do have that sort of freedom to make your own choices within the limitations that you have.
But I think that that is what's exciting, that you can choose what you want to do with your
Mhm.
life. And once you make your own money, you can do what you want. Because when you're kind of living, either you're kind of broke as a student or you're dependent on your parents, you don't have that same autonomy.
You're right. One thing I noticed or I learned as an adult, well, so you notice, or from maybe this is just me, but you notice money more when you start paying bills. And by paying bills, I think it's more for folks who are more just independent. Like you don't live with your parents, you are living out on your own. And then you're paying like your rent or your mortgage, you're paying all of the house, your electricity, like all of these bills. You notice that. Even grocery shopping. If you live by yourself or something like you notice money, I think, on a different level than you would as a kid who, if you got an allowance or you had to work for it, I think it's just, for me, it's something that I definitely noticed more because I have to pay for things more often just because that's how it works.
Yeah, there's just so much costs that come into living.
Mm-hmm.
But I also do think it's a sort of exceptional time period where rent is so expensive, there's inflation, even food is just expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I think before might have been a little bit better, but obviously that was always part of being an adult, but it's kind of crazy now.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess one other thing I would say is, when you're a little kid and as you get older, you realize this, because you look up to your parents and you see them, how they're living their lives. And you think like, oh, they know so much. And obviously they've had all these life experiences and learned a lot of things, but there is no blueprint on how to live your life.
Nope. That's the thing I learned. Everybody's winging it.
but I think that you think like when you're like a 5-year-old, you're like, oh, my mom
Like they
knows,
know everything
they
and
know everything about life. And it's actually crazy because, you could even become a parent and it's like, well,
you
I
don't
don't
know, you're
even know
just
what
figuring it
I'm
out. Yeah.
doing. Because you could
Because
read a
you've never been a
parenting
parent
book.
before. Yeah.
Like you could read a parenting book, but at the end of the day, it is a new thing for you, and you're also trying to figure out how you even manage. Like, oh, I'm a mom now. I'm a dad. What do I do?
I totally
But
agree with that.
but being positive about all of that, there's no guidebook or manual or blueprint about how to live your life. I think it's sort of excite. If you look at it in a positive way, it's
Hmm.
you can kind of say there's so many possibilities and things you can do, and you're the one that can um, decide and make those choices about how you even want to live your life. And
That is
hopefully you don't
very
regret the
exciting.
decisions you make.
Yes, and I'm glad that you said that because I do think that there are things that you realize as an adult that obviously, as you said, make it more exciting and we are living this life, right? So I do think it's nice that there's no like strict pathway. Everybody, every one of us is on our own journey, and I think that's the exciting part of it. And sometimes you don't know where that journey is going to go. Sometimes maybe you guess, but the beauty of being an adult, I do agree, is part of that sort of ability in that sense to make those types of choices for yourself and then see how life turns out.
Yeah, and hopefully you don't have any big regrets.
Yes, hopefully we don't. But
Yeah, I
that's
mean we're
the thing, right? In life, you never know what's going to come at you at some points. But
well, we're both 29, so hopefully we can not make any choices we're gonna regret. Still, we have time to turn it around. Like, right?
yes, we do. And I don't know, for me, that is definitely something that I think about is like I don't want to, not that anyone wants to live and have regrets, but it is something that when we talk on this podcast episode, we've been talking a lot about how being an adult, you're making decisions and all of those things. And I think it's nice, and none of us want regrets. Sometimes we make certain decisions that it doesn't work out, or other things happen that are out of our control. But I do think it's nice to go into it thinking like, okay, I don't want any regrets. So let me make choices that I think are best for me and all of that. And hopefully I don't have any regrets. But
And going back to what you said, I do think that it's true that everyone's on their own personal journey and living their lives the way they want to on their own prerogative. And I think that that's the key, is not comparing yourself to anybody, because you're living your life for yourself and choosing how you want to live your life. And
what is
that's,
that phrase? Comparison is the thief of joy or something like that.
I hadn't heard that, but that's a good,
Well, yeah, it's an English phrase that I learned.
you've been reading your Shakespeare.
Apparently so.
I don't think Shakespeare said
I
that.
don't
He
think he
doesn't,
said that. I don't know who said that,
but
but it's true, right? Because once you start comparing yourself, what if you make yourself feel like you're inadequate or whatever it may be? Like just because somebody else is on their thing, whatever it is, doesn't mean you can't get there either. Maybe it's just you're going to get there a different way and that's okay. But I do understand in the moment it's tough to see that when you, especially if you're desiring something that somebody else has or the type of life that they're living and all of that as well. And I will, the only other thing I'll say about that is that it poses a danger to do so much comparison because you don't really know everything about that person's life that you're comparing yourself to. Like maybe you're just seeing on the surface what their life appears to be and all of that, but you don't actually know what's going on behind closed doors. So sometimes the grass seems like it's greener on the other side, but that may not always be the case.
yeah, and I do think that that's the problem. Like a lot of people aren't living their lives for themselves. They're kind of trying to meet up expectations or fit
Hmm.
in or those sort of things. And at the end of the day, I think those are the things that will make you regret your choices in life if you
Yes.
do live your life that way.
Yeah. Live your life. Don't try to live somebody else's. Great. Alfredo, any other comments on this topic? Anything else you want to leave the audience with?
And then one thing I would ask listeners is to think about something that you as an adult, you're living life, you're paying all these bills, you might be unhappy about it or annoyed that you have to go to work. But I want to think about yourself when you were a 16-year-old teenager longing to be free and to be able to make your own choices and do whatever you want, and kind of think about and talk about with yourself what we said about flipping things, where yes, this is annoying in some ways, but when I was 15, I would have been so excited to be living this life where I have complete control of everything I do. Whatever aspect of your life that may be, I don't know, you can kind of analyze and decide. All right, everybody, we're sorry for the hiatus
Yes, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Lush Life No Labels.
with Alfredo.
And Michelle.
Thank you for listening. We'll be back.
Yes, we'll see you next time.